Hey everybody, welcome to or back to my channel, and today we are talking 101 horror books to read before you're murdered. So I picked up this book. I'm always looking for like recommendation lists. I love reading through books that are on like the best of lists, and I thought, the best ones to read before you're murdered have to be pretty interesting, right? So this book is broken up into different categories, but like it gives a breakdown of each novel. It highlights different authors. It talks about the genres. It's really interesting. There's a lot of detail in here. I had a lot of fun flipping through what I have so far, but I thought, you know what? Why not do some reading vlogs to talk about all the different books as I read through them. There are obviously some on this list here that I have read that I probably won't reread. There's a few that I was thinking about maybe rereading. But either way, I'm really excited to go through this. The first section in this book is paranormal. And specifically for what we'll be reading in this vlog is haunted houses. So there are 6 books listed under the Paranormal Haunted Houses section. That is The Grip of It, Hill Creek, The Ancestors, The Book of Accidents, The Switch House, and Just Like Home. So the first book on this list that I read, or I guess listened to, was Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It could have been 5, but I think it was a little long-winded. It was over 400 pages, which I think for a horror book, generally, that's a bit too long for my liking. I normally like them in about the 300 to 350 page range. I think that those are the most impactful, at least from what I've read so far. But in this book, we follow a group of 4 authors who are all famous in their own regards, in their own genres and lanes, but they are all quite different from one another. They get invited by this like internet mogul to come to the Finch house on Halloween night for a really like intrusive interview and kind of getting them to sort of go head to head. And it's definitely an interesting premise. Of course, the Finch house is one of the country's most infamous haunted houses, and the authors kind of reluctantly agree to go, but they also weren't told that the other authors were going to be there, so they think they're the only one going to get interviewed. And then they kind of just get jumped in a room together, and like there's piles of all of their books on the table, and they're trying to figure out like what is going on, why they're all there. Of course, while they're there, weird things start happening around the house. It is definitely pretty threatening and kind of a very bloody legacy to the house. So, of course, all of that bad energy is attaching itself to the authors. They all end up going their respective ways home after this incident, but it's only then that things start getting even creepier. Um, they're all writing their own books, but like their books are kind of the same. They're going crazy. Their loved ones are worried about them because like everything is about this book and like they won't come out of like their little working caves. Um, and then they end up reconvening together, and they just keep having like twists and turns, and like it's really interesting. I just wish it would have been a little more fast paced. This one is a very character driven book, and honestly, I thought most of the characters were kind of annoying. So I was kind of like, can we hurry it up? Can we get to the action parts and like, or get back to the action parts? But overall, it was still a really enjoyable book. I think the twists were fun, and I had a lot of fun with it. So I do recommend Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. The next book that I will be reading is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I don't know much about this one, but from people I know that have read it, they have quite enjoyed it. So I'm excited to jump in. I obviously know it's another haunted house story, but besides that, I have no clue what to expect. So I'll check in with you guys when I finish this one. All right, guys, I have finished Just Like Home. I'm giving this one 4 stars as well. I really enjoyed it. This one is a lot more creepy and more. I'm not sure that I really want to say it's fully a haunted house story. It is paranormal, and there are things to do with the house, but I don't think it's the house itself. So I have a hard time justifying the genre they put this one in. But in this book, we follow Vera, who has kind of been estranged from her family for a very long time. And she gets a call from her mother to come home because her mother is old and she is dying, and she wants her to come help get her affairs in order. So she goes home, has a very like awkward conversations and connections with her mother. Um, there's obviously a lot of ill will between the two of them, and kind of trying to come to terms and acceptance with that because she knows her mother's dying, but like, can she forgive her for the trauma in her childhood? We also find out more backstory about her father, who is now at this point deceased, but he was actually a serial killer and buried bodies beneath their house. So it was definitely really weird. Her and her father, like when we got the flashbacks of like when she was young, had a very good connection. He obviously cared for her quite a bit. And it made the mother look even worse because she was very like high strung, but it's very vague on like if she knew what was really going on or not. And like I think she did, but like everyone was just being like beating around the bush, and like even Vera herself, like when she was little, didn't really fully understand that what her father was doing was wrong. So there's just tons of like secrets and things to uncover in this book. There's also this artist that moved into like the guest house who basically just paints haunted houses, and like somehow weaseled his way into her mom giving him the house when she passes away. And Vera keeps finding all of these notes in her father's handwriting around the house and is blaming this weirdo guy. So yeah, definitely tons of secrets to uncover in here. And it definitely had like those gothic, eerie thriller vibes, but like done in a much faster pace, which I appreciate because normally I stray away from gothic because they tend to be very slow paced. And this one kept me interested and engaged the entire time. It's really not that long of a book to begin with. And yeah, overall, I had a really good time with it. So, another one that I highly recommend. All right, I have officially finished my next book in the 101 horror books to read before you're murdered, and that was the Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. This bad boy is a chonker, and it took me quite a while to get through. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but this is not something that is going to be for everyone. It definitely has a very old school horror vibe. It feels very Stephen King, where it's like overwritten almost, um, which works for some people and definitely does not for others. I'm someone who hates it in romance and fantasy, but love it in horror. I don't really know why. I haven't analyzed it, but yeah, for some reason in horror, it's okay to me. So in this book, we follow a family um, who are kind of now reliving past trauma. The husband, Nathan, grew up in this small town and had a very abusive father. As he got older, he moved away. He met his wife, who was also from this small town, but when she was a little girl, she saw something that she shouldn't have, and now makes these weird, like, haunted figures and dolls and things as, like, a coping mechanism, and she still does this now as an adult. She's an artist, she makes her living off of creating things, and then they also now have a son together who has some interesting things of his own going on. He can kind of like tell and see when people are hurting or upset or sad or mad. And always he takes it to heart. Like it's really hard for him. He has a tough time dealing with this and seeing all these emotions. And now what has happened to this husband and wife, now that they've moved back to this small town, is starting to happen to their son. Their son gets this new friend who's really weird and like dragging him into things that he shouldn't be getting into. Um, but it's also kind of bringing him out of his shell, right? Because of his ability to, see these human emotions, he kind of keeps to himself and is very sheltered. But this boy that their son makes friends with is really into like dark magic and starts getting their son Oliver involved. Uh, and things kind of start going awry. And now this family is fighting, the good versus evil battle to kind of save their son's soul and save the family. It was a lot. It was a little hard to follow at times because we were following the three different characters' points of view. So we did jump around a lot. And I think that's why it's so long too, because like we had to get the full life story of the dad and then the mom, um, because their childhood also affected the story. So that's what made it a little bit longer, maybe. But overall, I really liked it, but I could see how this would definitely not be a hit for everybody. And next up, I am going to be reading The Switch House by Tim Meyer. So I will check back in with you guys when I have finished that one. All right, guys, I have finished The Switch House by Tim Meyer, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars, which I guess doesn't sound like I enjoyed it all that much. But keep in mind, it is a novella. It is 160 pages, so a 4 star for a novella for me is a raving review. I loved it. I don't think I've given a novella a 5 star ever. But in this book, we follow Angela and Terry, who are a husband and wife that just got home from a couple months of filming a reality TV show called Let's Switch Houses, where these two switch homes with an elderly woman. This woman is kind of weird and bizarre, and she claims she can communicate with people from the beyond. Her husband has passed away, so she communicates with him regularly. And once they get back into their home, something just feels off. Something isn't quite right. Angela starts sensing things, seeing things. It's like kind of just infecting her mind. And then things kind of slowly progress from there. Then she starts having nightmares. Um, she also starts getting like lucid visions while she's awake. She's questioning her own reality. She is seeking psychiatric help. She is getting medication, but things just keep getting worse and worse for her. So this whole story, we kind of just follow Angela trying to figure out what on earth is going on. Her husband is having a really hard time because he doesn't really understand it. They just think she's going crazy, or he just thinks she's going crazy, but Angela thinks that there's something else going on. So she seeks the help of the weird woman that was living in their house. And this was definitely a wild ride. The end was pretty ambiguous. And the cover on this is absolutely gorgeous. I actually read this on Kindle Unlimited, but I kind of want to get a copy for myself because, like, Y'all know I love purple, but regardless of that, like the house, the weird tentacles at the bottom, like it's so eerie and creepy. Um, and I just had a whole lot of fun with this one. So far, I think this is the favorite of what I've read so far. But we still have two more books to go. The next one I'm going to be reading is The Ancestors, and then I also need to read The Grip of It. So I'll check back in with you guys when I finish the next book. All right, guys, I have finished the next book in 101 Books to Read Before You're Murdered, and that was The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni. Oof, guys, this book. I gave it 2 stars, but honestly, I'm kind of rethinking that it might be lower. The more I think about it, the more this book pisses me off. Um, so this is sold as a gothic suspense novel. Um, and it starts off that way, definitely. There's family secrets, but then we get into like human genetics and the burden of family inheritance, and like it all just gets a little too woke towards the end. But in this, we follow Alberta. She goes by Bert Monty, and she receives a letter in the mail in her New York apartment addressed to Countess Alberta Montebianco. And she is kind of confused. Um, Her family has all since passed away, but she's pretty close with her husband's family. But her and her husband are having a hard time because she's lost a couple pregnancies and life is just not going great for her right now. So when she receives this letter, she finds out that she has inherited a noble title, a bunch of money, and a castle in the Italian Alps. So she's a little skeptical at first. She goes to her husband's grandmother, who is in a retirement home, to ask her because her husband's family is from this same village that her family is from. And the grandma kind of like freaks out. So she knows something's up and something's weird. She ends up going to the castle anyway to see what is going on. And she starts learning the mysteries about her family and realizing that, like, the legacy is not just in the treasures that lie in this castle, but also her genetics. And that's where this story starts taking a turn for the worst, in my opinion. We get to like the halfway point, and then I really had to force myself to read the rest. Her ancestors have all had the same issues, fertility issues as her, and we find out that one of them ended up having a baby, but the baby was disfigured. So they kind of just like hid it away like a dirty little secret, which is really shitty. Um, and Bart herself has a weird disfigurement with her feet, but she doesn't think much of it. And the weird twist at the I don't know. This was the weirdest thing I've ever read, but just the way that we talked about human genetics just felt really gross to me. This was not done in a way that I think brought light to the discussions. It just like demonstrated how shitty people are when having these discussions. And yeah, I don't know. I was just so pissed off. Um, and the twist at the end made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Like it was just the dumbest thing I've read in a while. So I might be knocking down my 2 star to a 1 star because, like I said, the more I think about it and the more I'm talking about it now, I'm just mad. Um, so yeah, don't I don't recommend this book at all. But that being said, we have one more book to read for this video, and that is The Grip of It by Jack Jemick. So I will check back in with you guys when I have finished that one, and then um that'll be the 6 books in the Haunted Houses paranormal category in 101 books to read before you're murdered. So I think it might be kind of fun to rate them like favorite to least favorite. I think we already know what's going at the bottom. But you never know. We still got one more book to read. So I'll check back in with you guys a little later. All right, guys, I have officially finished the last book for this vlog, and that is The Grip of It by Jack Jemick. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. We follow Julie and James, who have just settled into a new house in a small town outside of the city where they met. They're kind of forced to move here because James has a gambling addiction and he can't keep his impulses in check. But overall, like, Julie's not that upset with it. She's okay to like start a nice new quiet life. However, this house has other plans for them. Things kind of spiral out of control. The architecture of this house is constantly like changing. Hidden rooms keep appearing and disappearing. There's mold coming out of the faucets, stains on the wall that kind of like move and live. Julie keeps getting like these weird bruises that grow and move all over her body, and we kind of followed their journey trying to figure out what is going on. And overall, I just feel like I didn't connect all that much with the characters. Like I couldn't care less what happened to either of them. And I think that's my biggest gripe here is just like I didn't care. And also the ending was kind of lackluster. It just kind of ended. I don't feel like we had any true like resolution. It just kind of like stopped and we just kind of like moved on with life. This is definitely more like psychological, I feel like, more than anything. I know it's classified as paranormal, that's why it's in this category that we're reading it. But I didn't really feel like it really brought the paranormal vibes. It was mostly just psychological, in my opinion. But overall, I'm glad I read it. I really love this cover. It's kind of hard to see and kind of pick up like the little faces are all over the cover. It's really pretty. It's neat. But definitely not a favorite of mine. But that rounds out the 6 books that I read for the Paranormal Haunted Houses section of the 101 books to read before you're murdered. Let me know down in the description below if you have read any of these books. I would say The Switch House was probably my favorite. Just Like Home was probably a close follow-up to that. But overall, I enjoyed my time with most of these. My least favorite was definitely The Ancestors. That one just made me really mad. um, but yeah, I'm excited. The next chunk of books out of here that I will be reading is still in the paranormal category, but it is ghosts specifically. So we'll be reading Heart-Shaped Box, White Horse, When the Reckoning Comes, and The Hacienda. So I'm really excited to jump into those. It'll probably be another month or so before the next episode of this comes out, but thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. If you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe. Also, make sure all your notifications are on so you don't miss any upcoming content. Give the video a thumbs up on your way out, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye!